I've been watching other people do this on Facebook all the time and wondering, what's that all about? How does that work? Do they like it? So now we get to see for ourselves. And if you really insist on seeing me and not instead of just hearing me, go to Facebook. Go to Facebook Live. You can see us in the studio here having this conversation. And as always, feel free to participate in this conversation live as well. 313-577-1019 is the number. That's 313-577-1019. What do you expect to hear from L. Brooks Patterson tonight when he gives his State of the County speech? What do you think about the state of Oakland County? What do you think about mass transit behind the failure, the 40th failure in this region in my lifetime to create a regional transit authority that has funding behind it? What do you think about the refugee issue here in Metro Detroit? L. Brooks Patterson has taken a pretty firm stand against the idea of settling more refugees in Oakland County. Is he right about that, or is that playing to bigoted instincts of some voters? So give us a call. 313-577-1019 is the number. You can also go to the WDET Facebook page and put your comments there, or go to Twitter and hashtag Detroit Today. We'll try to work your comments into the conversation. Andy, I want to start with you talking about what you expect to hear from the county executive tonight. Talk about how you feel things are going in Oakland County. I feel like it's a county that's undergoing a lot of change right now. Some people say that's change that L. Brooks Patterson is not reflecting in the way he governs. Other people say he's still the person for the job. Certainly, the electoral results suggested that he was. He won quite handily another term.
Yeah, well, he did by a much smaller margin than he had the previous year. And if you look at the trend line of his voter results, they've been declining for each of the
opponents have been getting
cycles.
closer.
Sure. Yeah. And so Oakland County's changing. You know, I've seen that. I've gone door to door in neighborhoods throughout Oakland County, and you can see it. And according to any number of sources, the demographics have changed, and we have a fantastic growing African American population. Apparently, 1/4 of the Chinese Americans in the entire state of Michigan live in Oakland County. We have great representation from the India subcontinent, from all around the world. And so when I go around Oakland County, and what I see is this incredible diversity, an incredible source of strength. And on the one hand, my colleague Brooks Patterson sees that because he wants to lure foreign investment, and you see the great work that our economic development team is doing. But it seems like we're trying to walk a little bit of a tightrope because on the one hand, we're saying, hey, we really value your foreign investment, and then on the other hand, out of the other side of his mouth, we're hearing some of these comments that are less receptive.
Yeah, less welcoming.
Less welcoming, thank you. And so, I expect to hear tonight that the state of Oakland County is strong, and that we are on a growth trajectory. As the treasurer, I'm very excited that the property values continue to improve. But what I'm interested to really hear about, Stephen, is that I see a regional realignment that's happening. And for a lot of the years that Mr. Patterson has been in office, Detroit has been in a weakened condition. And right now, as you see this great resurgence in the city, there's an incredible opportunity for us as a region. And so, whereas Oakland County might have lost out on not having a strong central city to help attract and retain our millennials, we've got that, and that's bringing some kids back. And so, how Oakland County positions itself going forward in this realigned region is what I'm most interested to hear about from Executive Patterson.
I think that's what a lot of people will be looking at that speech, trying to discern. And in the past, it's been interesting to watch how he talks about Detroit, for instance, how he talks about the relationship between Oakland County and Detroit. Sandra Svoboda, one of our editors here at WDET, did some analysis of how Brooks Patterson talks about Detroit, how often he talks about Detroit in his speeches, for instance, and that he talked more about Detroit in 2014 and 2015 when the city was in the middle of the bankruptcy, of course, and attracting a lot of attention. He has talked about it less since then in 2016.
Interesting.
He's talked more, in fact, about Macomb County, apparently, than about Detroit. And I think that really sums up that sort of tension that exists there. Is Oakland County primarily a partner with the city of Detroit, or is it primarily a partner with Macomb County? And I don't mean to sort of juxtapose those things as mutually exclusive, but I think historically, at least, there has been this concern about how the suburbs relate to each other versus how they relate to the city. And that's all changing because, as you point out, the city is changing. The city is experiencing this very, very vibrant revival in downtown and midtown that makes it more attractive to people from the suburbs, not just for business, but also to live. And I think that also has to concern Brooks Patterson.
Well, that's a good question. I think that the way that I would prefer that he look at it is not of these fault lines between city and suburb, but instead examine the success of some of the really thriving regions around the country. And what you're seeing is a collaboration, a consolidation of services, investment in mass transit, investment in the prosperity infrastructure that can help people in city and suburb grow and to grow together. And that has been a missing link. And so while there are successes that, Mr. Patterson can rightly point to, Cobo, for instance, there are many other examples of these fault lines being exacerbated. Yeah. And so, I'm interested to hear, what can we do as a region to focus on small business? We have my colleague at Oakland County, Bob Dadow, has suggested that the auto industry is reaching the peak of its business cycle. I was in the legislature when, the bottom dropped out for the autos. And so what are we doing to prepare for that, to diversify our economy?
Right.
And what are we doing regionally to invest in small business? The county's got a great microloan program. I hope to hear about that. It's a small loan program that gives between $5,000 and $50,000 loans. We had a great company called Hometown Delights in Pontiac, a little ice cream shop that got a $24,000 loan. And so these are the sorts of things that I think we need to focus on and identify what are the relative strengths of each of the suburbs and the city, and then how can they be compiled in a way that is complementary. For instance, the city maybe offers a great downtown and everything that Mr. Gilbert has built, and perhaps the Oakland County's got its strengths and its different flavors of downtowns, like the city of Pontiac, our county seat, which is also experiencing a bit of a renaissance that we're excited about.
Yeah. This is Detroit Today on 101.9 WDET. I'm Stephen Henderson. My guest is Andy Meisner. He's the treasurer of Oakland County, a Democrat. We're talking about Republican Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson, who is set to give his State of the County speech tonight. Will he talk about transit? Will he talk about refugees? Will he talk about regionalism? And what will he say about these things? What do you want to hear him say about those things? 313-577-1019. That's 313-577-1019. If you live in Oakland County, tell me what you're thinking about the changes that are happening in that county, the demographic changes that we're seeing take place in major parts of Oakland County. If you live there and wonder about the cities in Oakland County, Oakland County has some aging cities, Pontiac, Royal Oak, these places that are getting older, not just in terms of their population, but also in terms of their infrastructure and things like that. What kinds of things do you think L. Brooks Patterson ought to be doing or thinking about in terms of keeping the county on a growth path or returning it to the kind of growth that we saw in decades past? Again, 313-577-1019 is the number. That's 313-577-1019. You can also go to Facebook, the WDET page there, and put your comments there. Or you can go to Twitter and hashtag Detroit Today. We will work your comments into the conversation. Before we go to the phones, Andy, I want to talk about transit. In particular, we did see that that voters in Oakland, pretty narrowly, said they're still not sure about this idea of a regional transit authority, how to fund it, whether to fund it. It's one of the great disappointments, I think, of this region over time in my lifetime, is that we've never been able to get this together and actually do that. From your chair, talk about what problem you think we're having with voters in Macomb and some other Oakland and some other places with this, and what is it that we have to do differently? What's the sell that gets people in Oakland to see that transit is about them and about the region?
I think that the sell is a real value proposition. And if people in the out-county areas of Oakland and Macomb feel like they're not getting any value and that they are just subsidizing a system that isn't going to benefit them in any way, then we're going to see the sort of vote that we've seen. But articulating a real value proposition that includes the following, one, you're going to have an opportunity to get access to this system that's going to allow you to get to doctor's appointments and to your job and to get wherever you need to go around the region. Two, your kids are interested in transit. And so, family out in Independence Township, you might not ride it, but it's going to give us a fighting chance of keeping your kid from moving to Chicago, and they're going to ride it, and they're going to take it downtown. And so the next generation is somebody that really sees value here. And I think a third element of the value proposition, I am the treasurer after all, is the bottom line, and is seeing the dramatic impact that mass transit has on property values.
Yeah.
And that in Cleveland, which adopted a similar bus rapid transit system to what was proposed this last year, they saw a 325% increase in property values along those transit routes.
Yeah.
They experienced just under $6 billion in investment along those routes. And so those are things that provide real value. And for the opt-out smart communities that have developed their own strategies for getting people around, I think that RTA needs to go in there and say, hey, we can do it cheaper, or we can offer these additional services, but it's got to be real value.
Yeah.
Our voters are not going to be hoodwinked. They're going to know whether something is good. And while it would be nice just to rely on their better angels to do it because it's the right thing, I find that
you got to sell them specifically.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that.
We certainly didn't see a vigorous effort to sell people that way. I mean, I think the campaign did what it could given the constraints, but there needed to be a more direct sell, I think, to individuals. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Andy Meisner, the treasurer of Oakland County, about the State of the County speech planned to be given tonight by L. Brooks Patterson. Stay with us, and stay with us on the phones. 313-577-1019 is the number. What do you want to hear from Brooks Patterson tonight when he takes to the podium? Stay with us on Detroit Today.
WDET is supported by the DSO's Paradise Jazz Series, presenting a double bill featuring the Joe Lovano Classic Quartet plus drummer Brian Blade and his fellowship band on Friday, February 17th at 8 p.m. at Orchestra Hall. Tickets at dso.org. WDET is supported by University Musical Society.
Listening to Detroit on 101.9 WDET. I'm Stephen Henderson, and as always, thanks for tuning in. My guest is Andy Meisner. He's the treasurer of Oakland County. We are talking about L. Brooks Patterson, the Republican county executive who's slated to give his State of the County speech tonight. What do you want to hear from Brooks Patterson about Oakland County? What do you think about where Oakland County is in terms of the changes, the demographic changes that we're seeing take hold there? 313-577-1019 is the number to join the conversation. 313-577-1019. You can also go to the WDET Facebook page, put your comments there, or go to Twitter and hashtag Detroit Today. We'll work your comments into the conversation. Let's go to Tim in Farmington Hills. Tim, welcome to Detroit Today.
Phone call. My problem, I voted against the transportation bill.
Okay.
And like I voted against the emergency manager law.
Uh-huh.
And here we go. We're talking about transportation again. We already voted. The public spoke, and we chose not to want that program. And it just seems to me that there's some kind of vested interest or something. What's going on that it keeps being brought up?
Why do we keep talking about it, right, Tim? That's a great question. That's a fair. I think that's
I'll hang up and listen on the phone.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the radio. Thank you.
That's a great question. Why do we keep talking about it? Now, I would say that the answer to that is that this is not just about individuals. This is not just about what individuals want, but it's about the health of the community overall. I think our public officials have an obligation to think in those terms, but they do have an obligation, Tim, I think, to not just respect your wishes, but to address your concerns, right? What is it? And if you'd been able to stay on the phone, I might have asked, what specifically is your objection to mass transit? Is there a way that those objections can be assuaged in some way that maybe you think differently about it? And I think that's the goal of the continuous talk. I mean, I'm going to say this, and I say this a lot on this program. There is no other thriving metropolitan center in this country that does not have mass transit. If you've ever lived in another community, you know how far behind we are on that question. And so, from my chair, I think we talk about it because it's about progress, joining the rest of the developed country in some ways. I think that looks a little different from a public official's seat, though, Andy.
Well, I would say to Tim that, the reason it keeps coming up is because it works, and that these regions that you're talking about around the country, the key is to offer multimodal transportation options. And so, Tim, maybe he's not a guy that's going to take the train downtown, and he's going to maybe drive. But what the places that are winning, if you'll forgive the term,
Sure,
are doing is they're offering multiple modes of transportation. So not only do they have pedestrian lanes and bike lanes and, car traffic and freeways, but they also have mass transit options and bus networks. And so it's about offering different flavors because a region is interested in consuming many different flavors of transit, and many people did vote for it and have voted for it.
Yeah, and growth is so closely tied to transit in other communities. I mean, it's really hard to explain that to folks here because we haven't had it for so long. But if you go to any other community, you can see so clearly the link between economic growth, population growth, those kind of things, and transit. I mean, there's just those two things always go together. Let's go to TJ in Rochester. Great follow-up call to Tim. TJ, welcome to Detroit Today.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah.
I love your show, by the way.
Thank you.
And this is a great topic. I just wanted to comment that my girlfriend and I'm a lawyer studying for the bar, and she is a doctor, have decided not to stay in Oakland County, or even decide not to settle in Oakland County because of the transit bill not passing. So we just kind of see it as a situation where the older generation is holding the younger generation back, and the city is not, the county anyway, is not willing to grow with the changing needs of our society, and that's very frustrating to us specifically.
TJ, are you from here in Southeast Michigan, or are you from
I grew up in Ann Arbor, but I went to high school in Rochester Hills. I currently live in Oakland County.
Yeah, and that in a nutshell is the answer to Tim's question. Young people who are born here, who grow up here, who start their professional lives here, they want something different than what we've had. And I hear this all the time, that transit is a piece of that picture, and that if we don't have it, they don't have to stay. They will go to Chicago. They will go to Cleveland. They will go to Nashville, all kinds of other places where that works better. Andy Meisner, that call's got to drive a stake through your heart.
TJ, hang tight. The future is sooner than you think. There are a lot of leaders in Oakland County, in the region, who have a different view. The flip side of Tim's question about who has a vested interest in the building of a mass transit system, I might ask, who has a vested interest in not building a mass transit system? And that is more of a backward-looking orientation than forward-thinking. I started my career in D.C., took the metro. I know you were in that market. Yeah. And seeing when a new metro station would pop up in a neighborhood.
And the neighborhood change.
Oh, my. I mean, Columbia Heights. Yep. When I left D.C., Columbia Heights was really rough. I went back to visit. I mean, it was incredible. Yeah. And so
I tell a story all the time about H Street behind Union Station in Washington, D.C., which when I worked in Washington, I used to get off the train at Union Station and walk up to Capitol Hill. You didn't go back behind the station on H Street. I mean, it was sort of a hard border. I went back recently. They have a trolley running down H Street, and the development over there, the change in that neighborhood is unbelievable. It's unrecognizable to what it was. But it's hard, I think, for people here to relate to that because we just don't have the experience. We have no wins in that area. So we got to keep working on that. All right. Andy Meisner, Treasurer of Oakland County. Thanks, as always, for being here on Detroit Today.
Thank you for having me,
Check in with you and see what you think of the speech. Maybe tomorrow as well.
Thank you. I'd like that.
All right. That's going to do it for me today. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you will, too. This is 101.9 WDET, Detroit's public radio station. I'll see you tomorrow.